Have you ever actually seen a mustard seed? They are so tiny. I mean, almost like a little speck of dust. It is really hard to believe that something that small could grow into this huge plant, sometimes even 10 feet tall. But that's exactly what Jesus was getting at when he told this famous parable. So today, we're going to dive into this simple story and what it shows us about how the biggest things in life and in history so often have the absolute smallest beginnings. So let me ask you this. If you were going to build a powerful kingdom, how would you do it, right? You'd probably raise an army, get a ton of money together, maybe seize political power. That's what most people would do, and honestly, it's what everyone back then was expecting. But Jesus, he had a completely different idea. He was talking about a kingdom that was going to change the world, but he had no soldiers, no treasure, and zero political clout. So how in the world was he going to pull it off? This was the big question on everyone's mind. Okay, so let's set the scene here. Imagine Jesus is teaching a crowd, right? But over in the back, you've got this group of powerful religious leaders, the Pharisees. And they're whispering to each other, they're shaking their heads, probably rolling their eyes. They're looking at Jesus's tiny group of followers, mostly just poor fishermen, and they just can't wrap their heads around it. They're thinking, this is it? This is the great new kingdom he's been talking about? To them, it was just ridiculous. It was a joke. They were expecting a king with a golden crown, a mighty army. But all they saw was this poor, unpretending teacher with a handful of followers. They just looked at him and thought, this is the guy who's going to change the world? Come on. He's got nothing. No money, no power, no influence. It's impossible. You could just feel their doubt hanging in the air. But Jesus, of course, he knew exactly what they were thinking. He could see all that doubt and disbelief in their eyes. And so, he decided to give them an answer. But it wasn't some grand battle plan or a financial report. Nope. It was something way more powerful and a lot more surprising. It was a simple story, a parable about something incredibly small. He told them that his kingdom was like a mustard seed, which was one of the tiniest seeds they knew. I mean, so small you could barely even see it. But from that tiny, almost invisible beginning, it grows into a huge plant, the greatest of them all. It's this shocking contrast, right? And that is precisely the point he was making. And can you just imagine what it must have been like to hear that? To look around you and see just a few poor fishermen and then be told that this was the beginning of a great new kingdom? It would have been really hard to believe. And in fact, a lot of people did doubt. They'd point to the poverty and the small number of followers as a perfect reason not to join. It just didn't look like a winning team at all. But see, that's because they were thinking about power all wrong. They were still thinking about earthly kingdoms, the ones built on force and fighting and conquest. Jesus was talking about a totally different kind of power, a kingdom that doesn't conquer, it grows. Just look at the difference. Earthly kingdoms, the kind everyone was used to, they rule by physical force. They use war. Their symbols are often these fierce, predatory animals, right? But Christ's kingdom is the complete opposite. It grows naturally, from a principle of life planted inside you. Its founder isn't a warlord, he's the Prince of Peace. And its symbol isn't a lion or an eagle, it's the Lamb of God. And that, right there, is the crucial point. This new kind of kingdom doesn't force anyone to join. It doesn't use weapons or threats to make you believe. Instead, it plants a little seed of truth and love in your heart and just lets it grow from there. It's a kingdom built on love, not fear. And that's what makes it so incredibly powerful. So what happens when this tiny seed gets planted? Well, it starts to grow. And as it gets bigger and stronger, it turns into something large and welcoming, kind of like a giant mustard plant with these huge branches reaching for the sky. It becomes a place of refuge, a home for everyone. You have to remember, as Jesus was telling this story, the people listening could literally look around and see mustard plants everywhere. They knew this whole process by heart. A tiny seed gets planted, a fragile little shoot pops up, but because of that life force inside it, it just keeps growing and flourishing until it's this giant plant with these huge branches, big enough for birds to fly in and find shelter from the hot sun. And that's the whole idea. The birds finding shelter in the branches, that represents the kingdom becoming this safe haven. It starts small, but its influence spreads far and wide, offering protection and a home to everyone, from everywhere. People from all nations, all backgrounds, all walks of life, they all find a home there. And listen, this isn't just some ancient story. This pattern of small, unlikely beginnings leading to massive change has repeated itself over and over again throughout history. In fact, some of the greatest movements the world has ever seen started with just a handful of people who dared to believe they could make a difference. I mean, just look at these examples. These are real-life mustard seeds. You've got Paul and Silas, a couple of humble tent makers, whose mission to Europe seems totally hopeless at the start. You have Martin Luther, a single monk who stood up to the most powerful empire of his day. Or John Wesley, who preached to the outcasts and started a worldwide movement. In every single case, something that seemed small and weak grew into something that changed the world. This verse from the Bible really just sums it all up, doesn't it? God hath chosen the weak things of the world to confound the things which are mighty. It's this repeating theme we see all through history, real strength coming from the most unexpected and humble places. The very things the world might ignore or look down on end up becoming the tools for the greatest change. So, what does all this mean for us right here, right now? Is this just an old story from some dusty book, or does it actually have something to say to us today? I think it does. I think this parable is more relevant now than it has ever been. Actually, the source material we're looking at suggests that this story has a special, powerful meaning for our generation. The growth of that tiny seed from 2,000 years ago is still happening. It's meant to reach its ultimate fulfillment now. And we see it, don't we? We see it in the small acts of kindness that ripple out and change whole communities. We see it in the quiet voices that speak truth to power. We see it in the seeds of hope being planted in the darkest corners of the world. So the parable of the mustard seed teaches us to never, ever underestimate the power of a small beginning. It reminds us that a truly powerful kingdom isn't built on force, but on life and on love. And it challenges us to look for that mustard seed principle in our own lives. So I'll just leave you with this question. What are the mustard seeds of today? What tiny seeds of good, of truth, or of love are growing into great things all around us right now, maybe getting ready to become the great sheltering trees of tomorrow?